years, the Canberra Bubble has sold us the fairy tale. They told us that the two-party system is the only way to keep Australia stable. But look around. Does this feel like stability to you? While the major parties spend their time high-fiving each other over net zero targets and international photo ops, everyday Australians are staring at $3 a litre petrol and power bills that more look like mortgage payments. We are sick to death of the hollow battery seeking and the managed decline of our standard of living. We don't want a lecture, we want a country that works for us again. And last week, well, the unthinkable happened over in South Australia. The Liberal Party, the supposed alternative, has potentially slid into a humiliating third place. One Nation is sitting at nearly 22% in the primary vote, and the rising right isn't a fringe movement anymore. It's a genuine heavyweight competitor for the soul of this nation. The silent majority isn't silent anymore, and they're tired of waiting for a fair go that never arrives. So the real right is on the rise. And Canberra, well, you've only got yourselves to blame. Welcome back to the old. So let's talk about why this is happening. It's not about ideology or culture wars for most people. It's about the affordability of living. Right now, you're pulling up to the Bowser and seeing $3 a litre, maybe more if you're regional. And we're told there's global instability or the Strait of Hormuz. But Australians aren't stupid. And I think we're tired of the main parties treating us like we are. Now, you're probably asking yourself, how did we get here? How does a country that exports more energy than almost anyone else on the planet end up with its citizens begging for a tank of fuel? Well, pull up a chair, because this is what I call the planned disaster. It wasn't a single mistake, it was a 20-year streak of bipartisan neglect. It was a philosophy that puts global profits and economic efficiency ahead of your national security. For 2 decades, Canberra, both Labor and the Coalition, fell in love with the free market fairy tale. Their logic was simple. Why run small Australian refineries when mega refineries in Singapore can do it for a few cents less? However, they forgot that fuel isn't importing a brand of TV for cheaper instead of making it here in Australia. Fuel sets Australia at a national security point. So let's now look at the Refinery Massacre. We used to have 8 refineries in this country. Now we have 2. It started in 2003 under Howard in South Australia. We ignored the warning. Then the hit list grew. Sydney lost its entire fuel supply under Gillard and Abbott between 2012 and 2014. Then Turnbull watched Queensland's Buller Island go in 2015. Then the final blow came in 2021 under Morrison, when we lost Kwinana in WA and Altona in Victoria. And just like that, Western Australia's ability to make its own fuel was wiped out. And what did Canberra replace them with? A just-in-time gamble. International law says that we need 90 days of fuel in reserves. Our leaders decided 20 days was good enough. Then they crossed their fingers and hoped that ships would never stop coming. Well, look at the price of the Bowser today. The gamble failed. Sorry, Liberal Labor, what a great track record. So no wonder One Nation is getting popular, because it's becoming overwhelmingly evident that Liberal and Labor never put national security or our interests in practice. So why not give someone else a go? Now let's look at the scoreboard, because the numbers coming out of Canberra tell 2 very different stories. On paper, the analysts say that Labor is safe. They point to the two-party preferred lead of 52% to 54%. So if an election was held this afternoon, Anthony Albanese would likely get to keep his job, but that 54% is a safety net made of a thin string. It's built on preferences, because the Liberal government is in pieces on the ground. The TPP is not built on passion, it's just there because no one has anything else to choose. So the real story, the one that keeps the Prime Minister up at night, is the primary vote. In the glory days of Australian politics, a government needed 40% of the people to pick them to feel secure. And today, well, Labor has dipped to a historic low of 26.5%. The majority of this country is walking into a voting booth and putting someone else's name on the number 1 box. Labor isn't winning because they're loved, they're winning because the Liberal Party has effectively collapsed. They're surviving on the scrappings of preferences from the Greens and the miners. Cannot govern a nation on 26% forever. So why is the heart of this country walking away? Because 3 massive hurdles. 1, the kitchen table. You can't sell family in the outer suburbs. That inflation is cooling when petrol is at $3 a litre and interest rates are eating their mortgages alive. The relief promised in 2025 hasn't felt real. It felt like a press release. The energy bill. 2nd, this January electricity bills jumped 32%. This is a threat to many people's livelihoods. The Greens transition is a hard sell and we can't even afford to turn the lights on. And 3, the Canberra Bubble. There is a stinging perception that this government is more focused on global summits and international virtue signalling like Australia is built on diversity, and they are not too focused on domestic sovereignty or the housing crisis. So when one nation's main policies are, first, immigration. One nation is nibbling at the edges here. They're calling for a massive cut in over 500,000 arrivals and the deportation of 75,000 unlawful non-citizens. In a country where you can't find a rental or the trades just can't simply keep up, this is hitting home. Second, free speech. One nation says that it wants free speech protections enriched in the Constitution and presents anti-censorship policies as their central cause. So this is brilliant. That's what we've been saying when the hate speech laws were introduced. And Labor has taken extreme measures to try to cut out our free speech, so this is great. And third, the party says that it supports lawful firearm ownership and poses further tightening of licensing rules, while also backing tougher border enforcements and tougher penalties for gun crime. For all Aussies, this is good news, and for a citizenry who wants more security, this is nothing but positive to me. And fourth, their tax and family policies. One nation promotes a joint income tax filing for couples with dependent children, arguing it will reduce tax for single income families and support parents caring the children at home. For families facing rises in interest and overall cost of living, this is very refreshing to hear. This sounds like a party focused on the real problems Aussies are facing instead of Labor's fake promises like decreased immigration, when in reality we had a record high last year. So after decades of both Liberal and Labor failing to properly maintain national security and failing to fully leverage Australia's strengths in key exports and neglecting major issues like immigration, housing and the cost of living, it's no surprise that support for one nation is growing. The party comes forward with policies like cracking down on immigration and pushing to enrich freedom of speech in the Constitution. They're tapping directly into the concerns many Australians feel are being ignored. And that's why they're on the rise. Because whether people agree with them or not, they're speaking to the issues that a lot of Australians feel haven't properly been addressed. So the rising right is no longer a fringe movement, but a genuine competitor.